a way. I know
Yes,
that's not
yeah.
something you particularly think, but like
Yeah.
what's
Oh,
wrong? Like,
yeah.
how is it what people think?
I do think, and I'm sort of influenced by having just reread what Sean's written, and now I have to think about how to put it. It does look like all people need to make decisions about everything, that you can't take for granted anymore the learning a crafts and then doing it. You have to decide whether to do this craft and so forth. And when people have to decide everything and can't just respond to what's calling them to do it, which is how it used to look, that when there was calling from God, so there was calling from the one supreme being, and then there was callings without a caller, which is where we should be thinking about. But then people lost track of that altogether and thought that we are just free, independent, autonomous, as the jargon, human beings that give ourselves principles to act on and reasons to decide. But when you do that, you end up always with this kind of absurdity that there's finally no reason to decide anything. Once you get rid of this calling, once you get rid of your being open to what you experience as what you need to do, there's no reason why you should do something rather than something else. And you see this in the students, and you see this in movies like The Ice Storm, which is on my mind right now, which is a completely nihilistic movie about people who have no reason to do anything rather than anything else, and how miserable they are.
You're sounding very Sartrean. No? Isn't that what his...
Yes, that's right. Whereas Sartre thinks it's the good, it is Sartrean, whereas Sartre thinks it's the human condition, that our condition is absurd, and in the end we just have to choose arbitrarily, because, and Kierkegaard's the first to see this, that if you're going to choose to give your life meaning, then you have to just choose whatever comes along, and it will just be arbitrary, or you've got some principles that give your life meaning, and then you have to choose that those are the principles you're going to follow, and it turns into arbitrary again. And there's another arbitrariness. Anything you can choose, you can also choose not to do, so that none of these choices has any grip on you. It's another Sartre example of a gambler who decides one evening not to gamble anymore, and the next morning he's completely free to decide to gamble or not to gamble. The decision doesn't make any, that kind of free decision, which isn't a response to a calling, a response to something that's pulling you to do something, and follow some course, or work towards some mastery. When there isn't any such calling that you are open to and receptive to, then you just arbitrarily decide, and you can equally arbitrarily change your mind.
But they thought that was a good thing.
Yes, that's right. Sartre thinks...
Is that what he said was made life absurd and meaningless?
Yes, it makes life absurd and meaningless, Sartre thinks, but he doesn't think it's a good thing. He just thinks you've got to be authentic and face up to the human condition. Man is a futile passion. And the futile passion is an attempt to find some reason for doing things, but there isn't any. And all you can do is cover that up. You've got to be inauthentic, because if you realized there wasn't any, you wouldn't be able to do anything. You would just be paralyzed.
So you're offering an alternate...
That's right.
view.
Offering, instead of sort of embracing Sartrean nihilism and the fact that life in the West, anyway, in the 21st century, has become a futile passion, we've got to figure out where we went wrong, what we lost sight of that got us into this. And where we went wrong and what we lost sight of is what we experience as making demands on us, calling us to do something or other, that we have to become open and receptive and responsive, not free legislators of the meaning of our life and the meaning of everything. And that was once obvious to people like Homer, that the gods just were these powers of various moods to take people over and make them all aggressive if Ares was there, and all responding to the erotic if Aphrodite was there. They understood that there was plenty of directives around, and you didn't freely choose anything. When Aphrodite shone on Helen, she left her husband and child and went off to Troy. It was no choice. It was just what she had to do. Nobody ever blamed her for it. In fact, they admired her because she responded to the call of the gods. And we lost it along the way, more and more.
But we do still have the language for people. People say, he has a calling for.
We've still got the language,
music,
right? Good, and
do this stuff. I mean,
and it's still there. What we lost was a sort of a sense of its importance, and the most philosophical way to put it is Kant, who's the big enemy, thought that anything that was just a calling was what he called heteronymous, meaning instead of being freely determined by our own choice and our own rationality, something grabbed us. And the whole Enlightenment is against things grabbing us and saying, no, we shouldn't let anything grab us. That's why we have to propose the right thing, or that's how it is in Kant, rational thing. By the time you get to Sartre, you just propose any old thing. But whatever it is, what you have to be free. For Kant, that's a great virtue. For Sartre, that's a great burden, but and it makes you very anxious. And you have to get over that, and we have to connect up with where we left an understanding of this receptive openness to what calls us.
Right, but isn't there also a way that the calling is sort of it's a wrong calling, which is it's not the wrong calling, but it's a different form of calling. Like say someone who thinks that they should blow up a plane because.
Yes, that's very important to how to understand the difference between that and just fanaticism and craziness. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, there's Kierkegaard's answer is that you've got to realize that and respect the ethical, even if you feel called to go against it. As a student sent me fascinating email, the best example of it is, who would have thought, in our own backyard with Huck Finn deciding not to turn in Jim even though he's a runaway slave. And Huck Finn feels this is terrible, that he's going to go to hell for it. It's the worst thing he ever did, but he feels that he has to do it. And that's because he respects the ethical, the ethics of his time, but he senses something higher that he has to obey, and he doesn't make a choice. He just wishes he could turn in Jim, but he can't because he feels that there's something that draws him to not do it. And you can't get any guarantee, this is sort of an answer, that it isn't craziness.
One second. I'm just going to move Genevieve a little bit back here.
Okay, you could take it all away if you want. Okay.
Because if it disappears, it'll be more worse. Hold on, let me see.
I see, okay. So
Wait, just move over to your left a little. No, a little less. Try that.